මිනිස්සු හතර දෙනෙක් ගෙදරක හදනවා. මිනිබිරියයි අම්මයි ආච්චි තුන් දෙනාම එකට බඩ උස්සගෙන ඉස්පිරිතාලේ.
Racist, fascist monks stirring up trouble between Muslims and Buddhists in Sri Lanka. But disgusted, many monks are fighting back.
In the world there is an anti-Islamic movement and also Zionist movement.
In this second part of our series, we ask why is it happening now and who is behind this most shocking of phenomenon.
Ruri, Chivai Lole, Mudai, Mina Lote, Young to Mudai. Oh, Miri like where are any like where are Ting Widow by your Mancredi like down. Gee, Jesus, calling Gondola Lumio, Wamio, man. Father now, Piasi me.
Meet the self-proclaimed Burmese bin Laden, a hate preacher who many blame for encouraging the mass slaughter of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. Now, I've spent some time in Myanmar and I've seen firsthand what such hatred can bring about. Hundreds of Rohingya Muslims have been murdered, butchered, often in the most horrendous ways, and hundreds of thousands have been forced to flee their homes. What's happening in Myanmar is nothing short of the cleansing of an entire ethnic group. But it's not only in Myanmar where Buddhist monks are preaching hate. This is Sri Lanka. In the first part of our series, we met Buddha Bala Sena, the fascist group at the forefront of inciting hatred towards Muslims. We exposed the destruction of Muslim holy sites and the attacks on Muslim businesses. We also asked whether the government was behind the violence or merely afraid to stand up to what is fast becoming a popular nationalist group. This week we delve deeper and ask why this movement has started now. Are foreign governments involved, and is Muslim Buddhist violence here to stay, not just in Sri Lanka, but across Asia? Meet Muhammad, a social media activist. He wanted to show me the kind of hatred Muslims had to put up with now in Sri Lanka.
This particular graphic which is being circulated on this particular page says that, okay, Sinhalese, this is the time for to be prepared. The Muslims are getting ready with weapons in Sri Lanka, and Vividaveshan, they will come in different phases, and don't you be patient, don't become really provocated, but the war is coming, be ready.
Muhammad not only showed me the reels of images attacking and insulting Muslims, he also showed me how activists like himself who were fighting back were named and attacked by the same people online.
And the threat here is it targets a whole lot of young people, and without seeing the facts, just because they see a very colorful and nice looking thing, they believe in it, and that has created a lot of social issues within already.
Since groups like Buddha Bala Sena sprung up, internet traffic like this has spiraled. So are you worried that Muslims will take over Sri Lanka?
Oh.
Why do you think that?
මේ වෙනකොටත් අපේ භූමිය වඩා වේගෙන් ඔවුන් අත්පත් කරගනිමින් යනවා. ඒක කරන්නේ මේ රටේ අපිත් එක්ක ඓතිහාසිකව ජීවත් වෙච්ච සාම්ප්‍රදායික මුස්ලිම් වරුන්ගේ උමනාවට නෙවෙයි. එකම ගැටලුව තමයි සෞදි අරාබියානු අතපෙවීම ඇතුලේ අතිදෙවන්ත විදියට මුදල් යොදවනවා ලංකාවේ ඉඩම් අත්පත් කරගන්න දවසින් දවස.
There are certain things that the Buddha Bala Sena claims to the problems that they see in society. I can understand why they say that. That does not mean I agree with it.
But generally, if you look at the majority of the intelligentsia or the business community, there does seem to be a silent approval of at least some of the things that both the Balasena are saying, and that's more of a worry, I think, than this minority group sort of being very vocal.
කුරාණයෙන් පෙන්නනේ ඔවුන්ගේ දෘෂ්ටිය ඒකයි. මොකද ඒ තරමට අර අල්ලා අදහන් නැති අනිත් සියලුම දෙනා පහත් කොට සලකන්න ඔවුන් නිවත කොට සලකන්න ඔවුන් කෙලගගහ තමයි අනිත් අයට කණ්ඩ බොන්න දුන්නේ. එසේනම් මටත් මතකයි මම පුංචි කාලේ ඔය ඔර්ලෝසු කනුව ළඟ බැහැලා බස් එකෙන් ඇවිල්ලා බැහැලා උඩහට යනකොට අන්න එහා පැත්තේ තිබුණේ මුස්ලිම් හෝටල්. මුස්ලිම් හෝටලෙට ගිහිල්ලා මම වතුර තිබහට බීම බීලා තියෙනවා. මා අද සබත වෙනවා අය ඔය ගොංකම් කරන්නේ අය ඔය මෝඩකම් කරන්නේ කෙල්ල ගහපු බීම කෙල්ල ගහපු කෑම අපි කන්නේ නැහැ කියලා ඔබ අදිෂ්ඨාන කරගන්න.
Are Muslims scared?
They are. No, naturally they would be, because of the level of venom and vituperative campaign that was carried on by the BBS amounted to almost sedition, almost a type of hate speech which went beyond all limits.
Out in the countryside, it's difficult to gauge how much the anti-Muslim sentiment has taken hold. Like in all countries, there are many stories of community violence, but over recent months, they have increased. Now, racial tension has flared up in many places in Sri Lanka over the last couple of years. We've come to a village just outside the capital to investigate a Muslim house which somebody has tried to burn down. Mr. Aruz told me how some Sinhalese children had been stealing from his brother-in-law's shop. The police refused to do anything about it, so his brother-in-law decided to take the law into his own hands. He beat the children. As a result, some Sinhalese took revenge and attacked his home. So the arsonists climbed on top of the house, removed a tile, poured petrol in, lit a cloth, and dropped it in. Luckily, this man's brother-in-law's family was able to get out in time before flames engulfed the house. We weren't able to find the Sinhalese people involved, but it was clear that this story had two sides. Both groups seemed to bear some responsibility. Now, this is a letter sent from this man's brother-in-law to a top police chief. It accuses the police here of not only not doing anything to apprehend the boys who stole from their shops, but also they allege that the police officers said to them, "Go away, you Muslims don't own this country, you should leave." The police officer was investigated and lost his job, indicating that the authorities do take racism seriously. This case seems to be closed, but with growing mistrust between communities, next time a case like this could be all it takes.
The real question, I suppose, at the end of the day is how much of provocation can be taken. And this is the kind of situation in which a small incident on the ground could spark something much bigger.
Not far from Mr. Aruz's home, we took a trip to the local Buddhist temple. There has been allegations that at this temple the local monk has used the beating up of the Buddhist boys as an excuse to stir up hatred against Muslims. We asked if we could speak to someone. I wanted to know whether they were preaching against Muslims, and indeed if they had any links to Buddha Balasena or any other extremist group. No one was available for comment.
Because of the culture of Buddhism in the country, the laymen simply tend to believe whatever their local monks say. And the BBS were using the local temples and the congregations to spread the message, and then it had a lot of good resonance.
In part one of this program, we talked to Mr. Maharoof. He showed us evidence of Muslim shrines being destroyed and of the burning of Islamic flags and of Qurans. Do you think by burning the Quran, an act like that, they're trying to provoke Muslims into...
No, they are trying to create problem. They are trying to make Muslims to be get angry and to attack Buddhist temples like that. They are trying to come to that position.
One monk nearby who was willing to speak to us was the Venerable Baragamo Thero, famous in this country He, along with other monks, has been speaking out against the BBS. We met him in the beautiful surroundings of a hillside temple.
Only thing I experienced is that the Muslims are scared, and they live in fear. They are scared, they are worried about their future.
I asked him whether he thought serious violence could erupt between the communities.
They all like to settle things, and majority who ring me, who phone me, says that let us not, start another bloodbath in this country. So majority are very peaceful.
The Venerable Baragamu Thero tells me that what the BBS is preaching cannot be Buddhism. He is as confused as anyone else as to how such hatred can be espoused by men claiming to be Buddhist monks.
I strongly suspect there is in the world there is a anti-Islamic movement, and also Zionist movement, that either both of them or one of them somehow got hooked up with these people. Sorry to say that. But within otherwise, why this peaceful Muslim community was targeted?
The Sri Lankan government has come under criticism for not doing enough to rein in the BBS, and even for supporting them. For the last 2 to 3 hours there's been a protest going on in Colombo. Or rather, there's been two protests, one pro-government and one against the government. Why? Because electricity prices are rising massively. Indeed, over the last few months and years, the whole cost of living inside Sri Lanka keeps rising. Many say the government has used the rising ethnic tension to take people's minds off economic troubles and to help secure the majority Sinhalese vote. But many also point to foreign support for radical groups. Recent BBS trips to Norway and the US have put Western governments in the frame. Israel has also been suspected. This is Dr. Jayatilaka, Sri Lanka's former ambassador to the United Nations.
The Israelis were telling the Sri Lankans that they were willing and would like to cooperate in the post-conflict phase, the post-war period, including in sensitive matters such as security. Now that worried me then, it worries me now.
The former ambassador was a prominent supporter of the Palestinian cause in the UN. As a consequence, Israel sent a letter to the Sri Lankan government asking him to be removed. As a result, he was sacked.
There is this very important sentence. It says, the ambassador, this is the ambassador of Israel based in Delhi, Mark Soper, the ambassador expressed his country's desire to play a greater role in the post-conflict institutional development in Sri Lanka. In this regard, he offered the assistance of his government in strengthening homeland security and counter-insurgency activities.
Israel in the past has had a very checkered history, but it's since the conflict resumed and since the tsunami, Israel in fact has played a much more behind-the-scenes role in terms of providing support, logistical support. There's definitely, in the post-conflict era, there's definitely been presence of more Israeli military in the region, training and the police as well as the military. So they are definitely a player. They're an interested player, not only for Sri Lanka, but for the region.
I'm interested in this as well. The ambassador regretted that continuously making derogatory statements against Israel have now been taken notice of by the Jewish lobby in the United States.
Exactly.
The letter goes on to say that the Jewish lobby in the United States has made note of the ambassador's statements and may act to influence the incoming Barack Obama administration. So it's interesting that it's saying that the Jewish lobby has an influence over Barack Obama and has an influence over the United States policy.
Is making a claim. It's the Israeli ambassador is making a claim to a third country that it's got people behind the lines in a sovereign country, the United States, who can influence
the US administration if they perceive a criticism of Israel by the ambassador of a third country in Geneva. I mean, the implications are amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were an American, I would take serious exception to this.
Yeah. Can we draw any distinction or any parallel or collusion between Israelis and the growing anti-Muslim sentiment?
Well, I cannot establish any causal linkage, and I cannot establish any influence directly on the part of the state or government of Israel. However, it may not be a coincidence that the state officials who have chosen to publicly associate themselves with organizations like the Bodhu Bala Sena are the same ones who